And welcome back. If you are just joining us, this is a tutorial series on building Inertia for Rails applications. I'm still Brandon Shar, web developer at Bellawatt, and in that capacity, I'm one of the creators and maintainers of Inertia for Rails. This is only video 2 in the series, so if you're just joining, you haven't missed much. Where if you are starting with this video, that is awesome. Where we are at is we have a brand new Rails application with Webpack, React, and no turbo links installed. We installed Inertia for Rails, and we're rendering a hello world page. So if that is the stage you are at, this is a great place to be. If that is not the stage you are at, if you have yet to install Inertia and you would like to see how that works, encourage you to go back and watch video 1 and come back here when you do. So let's get moving with building our application. As I said, all we have so far is a stock Rails application with Webpack and React. We skipped turbo links and we installed Inertia. So to keep moving, I think this is probably a good place to add some authentication. So we're going to use Devise. I don't set up Devise very often because it's one of those things you only do at the beginning of an app and then you forget about. So let's check out the Devise repo and see how to install it. I am skimming past, there we go, getting started. That's what I was skimming and looking for. So first things first, let's add a gem. We'll add Devise. We will bundle install. Awesome. Next, run the generator. Sounds good. Let's see, did that work? It did work, or at least it looks like it worked. That's great. So what is it telling us to do? Ensure you define default URL options in your environments file. I'm not going to worry about that. Ensure you've defined a root URL to something. Okay. I don't know if we did that. Okay, let's do that. And we will just route to our very same inertia example index. Ensure you have flash messages in your app views application. Okay. So we will just drop those in right here. You can copy the Devise views for customization to your app. Now we will just use the stock Devise views. And that should be it. So let's go back, and because we installed some things, let's kill our Rails server and start it back up. And I'm pretty sure if I hit refresh, nothing should have changed. Awesome. Because I believe we will have to tell Devise what we want to protect. Oh, okay. And we also want to make sure we tell it what model to use for authentication. So let's do that. So let's go back here and run Rails generate Devise. What did this say? Devise, and then it looks like it wants the name of a model. So we'll just use user, which we should already have. Or we didn't. Okay, great. And we'll migrate. Now, because it's a stock Rails install, we should just be using SQLite, which is perfectly fine. All right, and controller filters and helpers. So we want to add this before action, and we're going to treat this like it's a SaaS application, and we're going to protect the whole app. So we'll go to our application controller, which if you're familiar with Rails is the base controller that all of your controllers inherit from. And we'll add a before action. Now we should get a different response here. Okay, no method error in Devise sessions new. So the first thing I do when I run into a strange issue like this is I'm just going to knock out Rails server and start it back up again. Okay, and that very often solves our problems. Great. So this is exactly what we wanted to see. We are at the stock Devise login, and we can enter an email and password. We don't have any users, so let's make one. We'll go back to our terminal. Let's open up a Rails console, and let's just create a user. So I believe what we need an email, password, testing, and I think we need a password confirmation. Okay, let's take a look. Testing and log in. Awesome. We have signed in successfully. Now, if we refresh, we will stay signed in, and this is great. So let's make sure it worked correctly. We're signed in, but let's make sure we can access this user. So Devise gives us a current user method that you can use throughout your controllers. So instead of using, let's pass an additional prop. We'll say name YouTube, and let's pass that user we have. Let's say current user. Now we can go to our Inertia example component, and we should have this user. So we could just, for example, say hello, we have hello name, and let's just put the email, the user's email after this. Awesome. So we now have authentication. We have authentication. We are all set up, and we are passing the user down. Now, if you're looking at this, you're probably thinking, I'm probably going to end up using user a lot. So I don't really want to have to pass it explicitly from every single controller. And you're absolutely right. And luckily, Inertia has a way to handle that. So let's get rid of it here. And we'll show that we don't have it anymore. Yep, probably if I open up the console, we should be getting a JavaScript error, something to the effect of calling email on undefined. Cannot read property email of undefined. Perfect. So let's go back to our application controller. Now, why did we put the before action here instead of on the Inertia example controller? It would have worked fine in both places. The reason we put it here is because the Inertia example controller inherits from the application controller. And most likely, nearly every controller in our app is going to inherit from that application controller. So we can put things there that we intend to run on nearly every controller in the app. Another thing we can do here is we can store props. We can ask Inertia to pass props to every single Inertia render instance. So let's do that here. We're going to Inertia share a user, the current user. Now let's see what happens here. So we got an error. It's very interesting. Why did we get this error? Undefined local variable or method current user. Now the reason we ended up with this is at the time that Inertia share runs, which would be this is a class method, the current user does not exist. The current user isn't a class method. So what we can do instead is we can use a lambda and tell Inertia, don't try to use this method until we're right about to render, until we're actually sending the response. So we are back. And now we are using Inertia share that is providing this prop to every single page. How do we know that's true? Well, let's just add another page and find out. This is a recipe app, so we are probably at some point going to need to look at a list of recipes. So let's just make a recipe controller. Recipe controller. Uninitialized constant. Oh, oops, I'm in the console. Exit. Perfect. We have our recipe controller. Let's go to our routes. Let's go ahead and create a resource. Recipes, and for now, we'll say only the index route. Create our index. And let's render inertia. We'll say recipe list. This is not going to work because we don't have a recipe list. So let's go down to pages and create recipe list.js. We're going to keep this extremely simple right now. We'll say that looks pretty good. Awesome. Now the key thing to look at here is we didn't pass any props. So in order for it to get user, this must be working on every page. So let's take a look. No route matches recipes. Okay. That is because I said resource and I meant resources because those are different things. Uninitialized constant recipes controller. See, now this is something I do pretty regularly. The first framework I ever worked in extensively was Laravel. And Laravel uses a different convention for controller names. Laravel likes to have them be singular as opposed to plural. So let's just fix that. And there we go. We have recipes. Awesome. We have set up authentication. We have universally passed that authenticated user down to every Inertia page that we will create. And we have just set the foundation for our recipe list. I think that is enough for this video. In the next one, we'll start building out this recipe list. We will create our recipe model, hopefully fill it with some relevant factory or some relevant faker information, and start turning this into an app. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.